Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Okay, so today we're diving into a really fascinating tension right at the heart of the world's largest democracy. On one hand, we've got India's rapid economic rise, right? It's making very vocal ambitions about becoming a developed global superpower. But on the other hand, we have the reality of its everyday governance. And I'm talking specifically about this massive ecosystem of perks and privileges that elected representatives get. So the big question is, are these practices actually in line with global superpower standards, or are they, just a holdover from a completely different era? Well, we're going to break it all down for you today.
Now, consider this staggering number: 78 to 90 lakh rupees. Keep this figure tucked in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer. And no, this isn't the compensation package for a corporate CEO. According to the data, this actually represents the estimated true annual cost to the public exchequer for just a single member of parliament in India. It's wild, right? How on earth do we get to a number that massive? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the price of representation. Second, unpacking the hidden perks. Third, we'll do some global comparisons. And finally, reforms for a superpower.
All right, Section 1, the price of representation. Let's look at those visible financial costs. So if you go out and ask the average citizen what an MP makes, they'd probably point to 1.24 lakh rupees. That's the recently hiked basic monthly salary for an Indian member of parliament. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, especially for a national leader, that number feels pretty reasonable, doesn't it? But here's the secret to understanding Indian political compensation. This basic salary is quite literally just the tip of a massive financial iceberg. Moving right along to Section 2, unpacking the hidden perks. Let's see what happens when we look beyond that basic salary. Okay, buckle up, because on top of that base pay, they get constituency and office allowances totaling over 1.5 lakh a month, plus a 2,500 rupee daily allowance just for attending sessions. But then come the in-kind benefits. We're talking rent-free furnished government housing in Delhi, a staggering 34 free domestic flights every single year, alongside unlimited first-class train travel, entirely free medical care, allowances for phone and internet, free electricity, free water, and a guaranteed post-tenure pension of at least 31,000 rupees a month. I mean, it is an incredibly comprehensive financial safety net.
And it's really important to note here that this extensive system of privileges isn't just for MPs. It ripples across the entire political spectrum. State-level MLAs receive varying packages of up to 2.5 lakh rupees a month, complete with free housing and official cars. Step up to the level of ministers and the perks, well, they scale up accordingly. Chauffeur-driven cars, even larger residences, dedicated staff. And at the absolute highest levels, for the Prime Minister and senior ministers, the state provides extensive security convoys and entirely dedicated infrastructure.
Now consider how the tax system actually treats these benefits. If a private sector professional gets, say, a housing allowance or a company car, the taxman treats that as a perquisite and it gets taxed. But for a minister, it's a whole different ballgame. Specific provisions under the Salaries and Allowances of Ministers Act actually exclude the value of their rent-free accommodation from their salary computation. So this creates a significant, perfectly legal tax loophole, meaning politicians effectively pay less tax relative to the immense total value they're actually receiving.
Notice the massive disparity we're dealing with here. An MP's visible basic annualized salary is around 14.8 lakh rupees a year. But the true total cost? That hits up to 90 lakh. That massive, roughly 75 lakh gap represents all those hidden costs we just talked about. The market rental value of that prime Delhi housing, the security protocols, the vehicle maintenance, the flights. So the true cost to the taxpayer is exponentially higher than the visible salary.
Which brings us to Section 3, global standards. How does India compare to Western models?
When you compare them, the differences are honestly pretty stark. For housing, Indian MPs get rent-free bungalows right in the heart of Delhi, while US Congress members and UK Parliament members generally have to arrange and pay for their own housing. For transport, routine chauffeur-driven official vehicles are provided in India, but you just don't see that in the US or UK for standard representatives. And VIP security? India relies on these extensive, highly visible convoys, whereas in the US and UK, dedicated security details are strictly limited to only the very top tier of leadership. So the crucial point to take away from this is that Western systems operate on a fundamentally different philosophy. Now, yes, representatives in the US and UK receive substantial pay. We're talking around $174,000 for a US rep and £91,000 for a UK MP, and they do get generous staff allowances. But the focus there is strictly on highly audited, transparent compensation. They don't rely on these lavish, in-kind, almost colonial-era perks. Basically, everything is heavily scrutinized by independent bodies.
But of course, there are two sides to every coin, and it's important we look at this impartially. Supporters argue that, in a vast country with massive economic disparities, these perks are absolutely necessary. They ensure that a grassroots social worker or maybe a farmer can actually serve in parliament without facing total financial ruin in an expensive capital city. Critics, on the flip side, argue that this system has fostered a really disruptive VIP culture. The blazing sirens, the blocked traffic, the exclusive access, they argue this deeply contradicts the egalitarian norms that a modern democracy is supposed to uphold.
Finally, Section 4, reforms for a superpower. Let's look at the macroeconomic impacts.
When you start to aggregate these costs, all the MPs, all the MLAs, all the ministers and senior bureaucrats, we aren't just talking about a few extra lakhs here. We are talking about an incredibly massive scale of public money. Thousands of crores are spent annually, fragmented across both central and state budgets, and it's dedicated purely to maintaining VIP security, massive vehicle fleet, and elite prime real estate housing.
And this brings us to the real dilemma, which is opportunity cost. Every single rupee spent maintaining elite Lutyens' bungalows is a rupee that's not spent in your community. Imagine, just for a second, redirecting thousands of crores from VIP vehicle fleets directly into improving government schools, bolstering schemes like Samagra Siksha, or even expanding primary healthcare access for the poorest citizens. The trade-offs are huge.
So how do you actually fix it? Well, the sources point to several necessary shifts, things like monetizing these in-kind perks into taxable, transparent allowances, and implementing far stricter independent audits. It also means right-sizing the system, drastically reducing these bloated VIP security categories, maybe promoting shared or electric vehicles instead of massive private convoys. And ultimately, it's about linking these generous benefits to actual performance and parliamentarian attendance.
I really want to focus on this quote from the source material because it just perfectly summarizes the stakes here. Quote, "Becoming a developed nation requires not just GDP growth but institutional efficiency, reduced leakages, and public trust. You just can't spend your way to superpower status. You really have to balance the genuine dignity of public office with strict fiscal responsibility and accountability."
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to ponder. Will rationalizing this complex model of governance help accelerate India's path to becoming a global superpower, or would dismantling these protections actually hinder the diverse representation it relies on? It's a totally fascinating debate, and I hope this breakdown gives you a much clearer perspective on the numbers behind the politics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Do like and subscribe my channel if you like my video contents.